will be a song for our lesson. So let's stand together as we sing if it's convenient. 406. I am weak, but thou art strong. Jesus, keep me from all wrong. I'll be satisfied as long as I walk, dear Lord, close to Thee. Just a closer walk with Thee. Grant it, Jesus, is my plea. Daily walking close to Thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. Through this world of toil and snares, if I falter, Lord, who cares? Who with me my burden shares? None but Thee, dear Lord, none but Thee. Just a closer walk with Thee. Grant it, Jesus, is my plea. Daily walking close to Thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. When my feeble life is old, time for me will be no more. Guide me gently, safely home, to Thy kingdom shore, to Thy shore. Just a closer walk with Thee. Grant it, Jesus, is my plea. Daily walking close to Thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. Thank you. Be seated. The invitation song will be 671. 671.
I'd like to turn in your Bibles to Ecclesiastes. We'll in a little bit be reading from starting in the 11th chapter, verse 9. Ecclesiastes 11 and verse 9. I don't know if you noticed in the second psalm that Johnny led, it said, and I believe in the second verse it talks about granting the word success. And that's what my hope is, and I think everybody that brings the word to somebody else, that we're able to plant a seed and that seed will grow, knowing that the increase is given not by the speaker but by God. But it is our responsibility as the speaker to follow the scriptures and present it in a way that's easily understood. And it's the responsibility of the listener to open the Bibles and follow along, making sure that the things spoken from the pulpit are true and honest, and something that will help each and every one of us grow and again grant the success of the word. When I prepare a lesson, sometimes it's kind of with a broad brush stroke, and this one, my fear was I'd get here and it'd be most of us that are, I'm not middle-aged, I'd have to be lived to 150, but middle-aged and older, we wouldn't have some of the younger ones here. Because it's really, this lesson is for everybody, for our young people, and for the rest of us that are gray and white-headed. I want the young people, I want to go ahead and address you right now. You are a valuable asset to this congregation and to the Lord's kingdom. Don't ever let anybody tell you anything different. Never let your value be discounted, because you are the perpetuation of the church. And you, as you attend, your encouragements to those of us that are older. Our dog Daisy, she's 14, we got a younger dog, and that younger dog kind of pepped her up a little bit, but not to compare y'all to dogs, but y'all are, again, an encouragement. Encouragement to y'all poodle.
I've been called worse.
But seriously, you are a great asset to the church and an encouragement to the rest of us. Let's start in Ecclesiastes. Go ahead and chapter 11, starting in verse 9. Rejoice, O young man, in thy youth, and let thy heart cheer thee in the days of thy youth, and walk in the ways of thy heart, and in the sight of thine eyes. But know thou that for all these things God will bring thee into judgment. Therefore remove sorrow from thy heart, and put away evil from thy flesh, for childhood and youth are vanity. Starting in 12 through 7, verse 7. Remember now the Creator in the days of thy youth, while the evil days come not, nor the years draw nigh, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them, while the sun, or the light, or the moon, or the stars be not darkened, nor the clouds return after the rain. In the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease because they are few, and those that look out of the windows be darkened, and the doors shall be shut in the streets when the sound of the grinding is low. And he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low. Also, when they shall be afraid of that which is high, and fear shall be in the way, and the almond tree shall flourish. And the grasshopper shall be a burden, and desire shall fail, because man goeth to his long home, and the mourners go about the streets. I'm going to stop there. This is talking about going from our youth until our older age, and I can identify with that part where it talks about being afraid of the height. I used to climb trees like a little wild monkey and everything, and there was a place there in Hyco on the farm overlooking a large wintergrass field that was fermented by the turkeys. We put 30,000 turkeys on that 20 acres at one time. And those grasses really come on, and the deer just loved it in the late winter. And I'd get about 70 yards off, and there was well, Jerry will tell you that I used to always call my deer stand, but she'd tell you, well, a tree limb is not a deer stand, so. But I would have to climb one tree and go across a limb to another tree to be able to sit in it to shoot, and everything. And you couldn't get me to do that for nothing now, climbing across a limb to another tree and everything. But it talks about our eyes being darkened also. All these things come with age, and youth is to be valued and not to be too squandered. I think it's song number 911 in our book. It talks about bring Christ your broken life, and it talks about those early wasted years. And I can look in the rearview mirror and reflect and see there was a lot of wasted years in my life in the past that were of virtually no value, and they were not a true building block. Most things you do in life bring you to a certain point, but they were of absolutely no value to me and to my building of character. Thank goodness a little bit later in life, and as a child, I was fortunate enough to be brought up in a loving family that brought us to church and studied the Bible with us, and we had that good foundation. But the lesson is going to be about serving God in every season of life. And as a child, I look back and I don't remember doing anything bad, although I got licks every year in school all the way up to the 11th grade. But those years were pretty fleeting and everything. But I look back that really I can't look at anything that I did in those early years that I could say I served God in this form or fashion. I don't see anything. And then there was I call them the pre and post-Vietnam years, where I was like one of those NASCAR running at 200 miles an hour that lose traction and just spin out of control, and that was me. But thank goodness, at some point in time, I did manage to get traction back in my life, to bring God back in my life. And part of that was from starting a family, being married and starting a family and having kids. A lot of my values became a lot more laser focused when I had kids, and realized the responsibility that I had as a parent to raising those kids, and the value that I had in those kids, how much I valued them. I mean, we look at Jesus, he died for each and every one of us. We are his children when we obey the gospel and become his children. But that was a point in my life that I'm thankful for, that I was able to get traction back in my life. Not to say that now I don't lose traction every now and again, I do. But that's a point in my life that I can look to where there was a change in my life. And I became more focused on God and the basis of my religion, the basis of my teaching from my parents, and also through the church that helped guide me to that point. And I'm so thankful for that. I am so thankful for that. But no matter what part of life we're in, we're always facing challenges in our ability to serve God. There's always obstacles in that, and no matter what time of life, whether we're a young child or we're a young adult, a single, or if we're a young married person, couple, or as we get older, there's challenges that, as it speaks in Ecclesiastes, we become more fearful of things. Our eyes are darkened, and our hair turns gray, but there's challenges in every part of our life. And I'm hoping that this lesson will help us to maybe look in the rearview mirror a little bit and look at what we could have done better, and then look forward to what we can do better in our lives as servants to God. I look at servitude in two different ways. I look at it as in service as Christians to individuals, non-Christians, and also, the Bible does tell us to prefer the brethren and to our service to our brethren in the church. And also, I look at it as service, meaning servitude to the church as a whole, as a family. We have that. We have examples, and we have commands that this is how we should conduct our lives. And when we do this, especially as a church, I've talked about the blessings that we receive as a church when we come together as one unit, and it's like a multiplier, that we have greater strength as being in a unit, working together in step with one another, to accomplish things. And I'll talk a little bit about that at the very end. But I want to just go ahead and start. It said, serving God every season of our life. So what makes it hard for you, for me, to serve God? How we answer may have a lot to do with where we are in life. At every season of life, we find obstacles that make it difficult to do the work God wants us to do. We face obstacles when we're young. When we're 15 years old or so, sometimes it's just hard to find your place, to figure out exactly what you can do. You may even face obstacles from older people who are reluctant to let you get involved in God's work in many meaningful ways. I've been in congregations where the men or the eldership restricted all the work in the church to older men, and it didn't take on the abilities and the talents of the younger Christian. And I think they made a terrible mistake in that. I mean, we as older Christians should be mentoring our younger Christians, and not only through example, but putting them to work. Now, young people are going to make mistakes. You learn more from your fails than you do from your successes. Anybody that tells you all about their successes are probably only telling you about 1/5 of what all that has happened. We should always learn more from our fails than we do from our successes. But if we're not giving our young Christians the ability to get up and work in the church, then we're neglecting again a great asset. We face obstacles during our single years. It's during this time that many Christians get distracted by the pursuit of their education and neglect their relationship with God. But even beyond the years of education, singles can find it difficult to connect with their spiritual family. It's easy to feel out of place when it seems like most others are married and have families. Later, we face obstacles during our family years. Life gets so busy during the years our kids are growing up at home. What parent, especially mothers, doesn't know the struggle to find time to pray and to study while we keep up with little kids running around the house? It doesn't get easier either as they get older. And what family does not know the challenge of juggling a career, school, and a host of other activities with time for Bible study, prayer, and work in the church? Finally, we find obstacles during our senior years too. Most imagine that after kids are grown and we approach retirement, we will have all this free time to focus more on spiritual things. But retired folks soon find that they're never been so busy. It's also during these years that their physical limitations begin to impose themselves, sometimes hampering the spiritual work we want to do. I can tell you from experience that there was an event came about in my life that I had put so much focus, this is after kids were raised and everything, that I put so much focus on my job that I neglected other things. I worked a job where I worked another man's schedule. When I was a market manager, I wrote my own schedule, specialist and everything. And I can manipulate that schedule to make sure that I was off on Sundays, so I could be there Sunday night, and be at Bible study on Wednesdays, and during meetings that I could attend those meetings. But when you're working another man's schedule, you became, so to speak, a slave to them. And the one thing I had always asked of anybody, I'd tell them, you know, that when you write the schedule, there's only one thing I ask. I'll work any night you want, I'll work any schedule you want. Just on Sunday, either schedule me early or schedule me late so I can attend services. And everybody was always, you know, willing to do that for me. But when I finally retired, and it was an event, it was on Father's Day, I was so frustrated with my job, I had let it take over me, and I had so much turmoil in my life because of that. I had given that up, and I knew that I was neglecting my work in the church. On Father's Day, I told him, I said, I'll be back. And I took off for about an hour and a half, went to Sunday services, sat with my dad, who's gone, and my two boys. And I realized then how important it was to serve God over my job, to be there not only with my earthly father and my two sons, who I still have influence over and did then too, but also to be and serve there to serve my spiritual God, my spiritual father. And it was at that point I went back, finished out the day, marked my name off the schedule, the vacation time, and all the contact numbers, and walked out and never looked back. It was the best thing I ever did. I was able to serve God in many different ways. I was able to begin to teach the college kids and the high school students during the summertime, and I was able to serve the church better. That year, on a personal note, on that year I caught the biggest fish I ever caught. I killed the biggest deer I ever killed, and I met Jerry. And I always think back, it's like 2 out of 3 ain't bad. You know? I'll let y'all decide. No, seriously, she's been a blessing. So no matter what, we face hard decisions in our life, each and every day on how we balance our earthly responsibilities and our spiritual responsibilities. And sometimes it just takes that aha moment to help us figure out just what is important and what is not so important. So the point is that every season of life there are obstacles, but you can almost go ahead and substitute the word opportunities in place of obstacles. Because if you remove the obstacles, then that void should be replaced with opportunities. So you can flip these two words if you want to and apply it to our lives. There are things that get in our way, distract us, and generally make it difficult to serve God. If I'm looking for an excuse not to serve, I'll usually be able to find one. But if I'm looking for an opportunity to serve, I'll usually be able to find it also. With every season of life, there are special opportunities to support the cause and to grow. No matter where we are in life, teen, single, family man or woman, parent or senior, there are things we can do that are unique to that stage of our life. There are things that we can do that we may not have been able to do before, and things we can do at this specific stage of our life that we may not be able to do later on. The question is this: what will we do with the open doors God has set before us? Ephesians 5:16 says to redeem the time. Talk about looking backwards at the wasted years. Looking forward, we look at what we can do to redeem that time, to make that time most profitable towards expanding the borders of the kingdom and bringing the word to others, and to being a servant to each and every one of us in the church, and also to easing the burden of the brethren in the church. So let's think for a moment about the passing seasons of life and the unique opportunities each offers to serve in God's kingdom. In 1 Timothy 4, verses 12, it says, talking to Timothy, it says, "Let no one despise your youth." So let's look at, first of all, serving God in your youth. When I think about the opportunities young people have to do great things for God, I'm drawn to the story of Josiah in 2 Chronicles. For godly people in Judah, expectations could not have been lower when Josiah became king. His grandfather, Manasseh, was arguably the most wicked to rule Judah. Although he repented later in life, it made little difference on his son Amon, who continued in his wicked ways. His own servants, Amon's servants, formed a conspiracy and put his 8-year-old son, Josiah, on the throne, 8 years old. Think about that. Surely there was skepticism among the people as to the ability of the young person to rule this nation. As it turns out, he was able to be very effective. In 2 Chronicles 34, 1-3, if you'll read that, you can understand Josiah's story a little bit better. But his story teaches young people that they don't have to wait to adulthood to make a difference in God's work. The time is now. You look at other examples through the Bible of David going from shepherd to king. You look at Timothy, who was taught and raised by his grandmother in the way, and what a great apostle he was. And you also look at Joseph, and in Joseph's life, where he was sold into slavery, yet he became the right-hand man of the Pharaoh and was able to save his family, because of his diligence in the way he handled things. But young people all have special opportunities to be significant. Young people have special opportunities to do things specifically for the kingdom. Physically, they are in the prime of their life. They have the capacity to bring youthful energy and vitality to our work for God. Seeing the young excited about the Lord's work stirs up the rest of us. Every stage of life, young or old, is busy, But the most important thing should always be our relationship with God and our work in the kingdom. At this time of life, a lot of young people are confused and looking for direction, some of which are more often open at this moment than others, some of which are more open at this moment than any other time in life. It's a great opportunity for the young people to influence other young people, their friends. We all have a mission to share the message, to set people's lives on the right course. Again, looking back at my youthful years and the wasted years, like I say, it took me a long time to get to the point where, I gained traction and knew where I should be and what I should be doing. I am so amazed and appreciative that you see grown men, grown women that have served God from a child on up. There's never been that deviation. They've always been able to focus from the get-go. I'm always amazed by that and truly in awe of it and stuff. And I wish I could have been that person, But we all have that opportunity to do great things if we're just forward-looking. Again, as each of us has received a gift, we're to minister to one another. This time in life also is a great time to begin discovering and developing our talents. 1 Peter 4:10. Some of the advantages are you immediately begin to make a positive difference rather than wasting your teen years. You give yourself more time to hone your skills and to grow in effectiveness. So let no one despise your youth. That's 1 Timothy. Next, serving God as a single. Look at 1 Corinthians 7 and read 32 through 34. That's Paul's description pretty much of himself. But Paul is talking about the distractions that could come along with being married and having children, and the advantages of being single and be able to be focused just on the kingdom. So Paul's not saying that God values one situation over the other, but there are advantages to being married and to being single. He points out that a single person is unencumbered by family responsibilities. A married person must devote time to their spouse. Look at Ephesians 5:22 through 33. And as a parent, Ephesians 6 and 4 tells us to bring up our children in the love and admonition, and that's a command. And if I do not have these relationships, then I don't have the responsibilities that go with them. Paul points out that this frees a single person to be more focused on the work of God. Paul was a living example of this principle. Even if you are planning to marry and start a family, just remember that each stage of life presents its own set of obstacles and its own set of opportunities to serve. Just because you do not have a spouse or children in no way diminishes a single person's value to the kingdom. In some ways, it increases it. First, there are ways young people in our spiritual family who need someone to give them special attention. We can look to that. There are single parents who carry an impossible load that you can help shoulder. Galatians 6 and 2 says, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. There are new Christians who need a friend to help them begin their journey. I remember up in Chama, we had a family there, the Foyas, and the mother, she was from West Texas, and she had been in the church, and they had moved to Chama, and she was married and had 3 kids, I believe it was, and she was always a great influence on that family. And over, I don't know if it's 2 summers, I can't remember the exact time frame, but eventually the father obeyed the gospel, the 2 boys obeyed the gospels. Somehow the girl got hung up. Don't know exactly what it was. Well, I do. She just did not feel like she was ready to take on Christianity or all the responsibilities that come with being a young Christian by herself. And I remember preaching a lesson up there, and in the invitation, I said that, as we start this walk in Christ, it's not by ourselves. We have God with us. We have the brethren with us to help shoulder these responsibilities and everything. But we have each other to help guide us. And we're not perfect when we start that walk. As the Bible says, we're only ready for milk when we first start. We're not ready for the meat of it yet. And you start off a new Christian in the gospel, sometimes they'll swallow their tongue. It's just like, oh my goodness. I always tell people, start off with Psalms and Proverbs and start there, and then you can later get to the meat of it in the Gospels and stuff. But I remember saying that, reassuring that, a young Christian does not start this walk alone. A young Christian has the church to support them, nurture them, and bring them along. The mother gives it one of these, boom, and hit the girl on the shoulder. And it's just like, there you go. And we were fortunate to find out that next week that she obeyed the gospel. But we need to understand that we as a church, that we are a family, that we are there for new Christians. I was going to say young Christians, young in the faith, no matter what age, but we're there to support them, nurture them, and bring them to full maturity. I mean, that was Paul's mission, throughout, not bringing Christians to full maturity, but bringing churches to full maturity. But it's our responsibility as the church to bring new Christians to that maturity, and it's through loving and nurturing ways. There are older people who have lost their spouses and struggle with loneliness, who crave a listening, caring ear. James 1:27 says, "Pure and defiled religion is this, that we visit the orphans and the widows." These are certainly areas where singles can effectively, not exclusively, these are certainly areas where singles can serve effectively, not exclusive just to singles though. If you are single, you are valuable to the church. You are needed. So serving God with a family, anyone with a spouse and children can understand Paul's point about divided interests in 1 Corinthians 7:34. If you find yourself in the midst of these family years struggling to work in the church, to study, or to teach, don't lose hope. Don't lose your sensitivity. We can't allow ourselves to neglect our own relationships with God or our work for His kingdom because we are raising a family. In fact, to do so would harm our kids by setting a bad example. Keep fighting the battle for balance, faithful to family, serving God. You look at, God's proposal to Solomon. He offered, whatever you ask of me, I will give. And Solomon, in all his wisdom, asked for wisdom. And then God added all these other things to him. If we neglect one thing, it can have a great ripple effect. It's kind of like throwing a stone into a little pond. You have that ripple effect going all the way out to the edges and stuff. If we neglect our family life, our spouses, our children, that can have a ripple effect far into our children's lives and our grandchildren's lives. How we perform as parents is important to our younger people. Don't underestimate the value of your family work to the church. We have important spiritual responsibilities to our children, again, Ephesians 6:4. This work will not only bless our children, our family, but also the church. As we raise our kids to be godly, active, faithful servants, we're perpetuating the growth of the church. This stage of life also creates unique opportunities to advance the cause. During the single years and early years of marriage, many drift away from any involvement with any kind of religion. When these young couples start a new family, they often start thinking about God and start looking for a church. That was my experience. They're among the most reachable people in our culture, and we are rubbing shoulders with them all the time. We have a mission. We need to help these people at this key moment of our lives. Acts 8:4 says, "Those were scattered and went everywhere to preach."
we have a responsibility to reach out to these people and to help them find the truth. We seek to teach all, but here is an opportunity for those with families to teach others. Living with some same experiences finally serving God as a senior. Each stage has its unique challenges. Certainly we as seniors face challenges when we come to this point, but there are also specific opportunities. Leviticus 19:32 says, honor the presence of an old man. You know, you see all these people walking around with t-shirts that say, like maybe John 3:16 or Ephesians, something like that. I'm going to get one made up. Leviticus 9:32 says, honor the presence of an old man. You know? And I'm just going to put 19 and 32 on there, let them figure it out. But it teaches younger people to show respect and consideration to older people. The Eastern Asian people have got this figured out. They understand that the older people have experienced all these life situations and are to be looked to, you know, also as an asset, not something that is in its decline. There's great value in older people. I'll never forget being out at Abilene out there at Oldham Lane there, and I was drawn. There was a man that he always called ride with somebody else, James Oldham, and I always looked at him. He just looked like somebody that needed to talk, you know, to talk to somebody. And I'd go sit down next to him while he was waiting on his ride and visit with him, and he was just I don't know what the draw was, but I was drawn to that guy and stuff. Come to find out, he was raised on a ranch between Lincolnville and Desdemona. He lived in town on Graham Street, right down from the church, right next to my mother's Uncle Cecil Stone. And by taking that little bit of time to listen to his stories, I mean, we made even a greater connection. He eventually, his children, you know, the Bible says honor your parents, but his children did not do that. They put him in a nursing home far before he should have gone. And I would go in the morning to H-E-B and buy one of those little $4 bundles of flowers, cheap grocery store flowers, and I'd go around handing them out to people and give them. You'd be surprised on how much they appreciated that. Sit down on the side of the bed and listen to them. Let them talk. And James and I created a great bond and a great relationship. And I remember walking in there one day into his room, and his daughter, who was absentee, had come into town, and they had decided to take him off all his medications and his oxygen, which was virtually a death sentence for him. He was sucking air, bawling and everything like that. He wasn't ready to go. And but as soon as I walked in, his whole demeanor changed, and of course her dialogue changed also, and everything. And when he died, and I went to the funeral, one of his friends said, "You don't know how much he valued your visits." It flat broke me down. But having said all that, I encourage all of us to understand the value of the older generation and take a little time to listen. It'll be a blessing to you and to them. You see, Leviticus 19:13 teaches younger people to show respect and consideration to the older people. One of the reasons we should demonstrate such respect is because of the wisdom older people have to offer. The wisdom comes with years and experience They are an asset that should not be untapped. The fact that they have lived longer means they have seen more, experienced more, gained more insight, more wisdom than the younger. With wisdom that should be shared, Titus 2, 3, and 5. Titus 2 also talks about the older women teaching the younger women. All have great value. Even those of us who have made mistakes in our younger years can draw from these life experiences and to help others avoid the same pitfalls. I'll give you one last quick story, and that's it. I'll quit my story time. While back roading up in Colorado, we came up, it was a rainy day, muddy, and we looked on the map, and there was a road that we thought we would take through the mountains, and it would be real scenic. And we got to the head of that road, and it was blocked, and there was a guy literally dragging a Suburban towing it down that road and stuff, tires torn from the rocks and everything like that, and got it down. And the guy got out, and he saw me sitting there, and he came over to me. He said, "What are you fixing to do?" And I said, "Well, we were looking at this map, and we were going to drive that road." And he said, and he told me about the experience that had just happened. And he saw me pause. He could see those wheels turning. And I'm sitting there thinking. And finally, he puts his hand on my shoulder, and he said, "Son, just don't do it." And I tell you what, I've taken that to heart in so many things in recent years and stuff like that. Son, just don't do it. I look at that in my life and apply it to my life, that there are so many pitfalls out there in this world. We are weak. We're strong with God, but our flesh is weak. But I've looked at so many pitfalls and thought about, doing this or doing that and everything like that, and then realized where that road could lead me, and that it was not good. And then I always remember that guy saying, "Son, just don't do it." On the flip side, we were on a snowy road just fixing to hit the trailhead. A Jeep came out, and I asked the guy what the road conditions were ahead. He looked at the Texas plates, and he looked down at my street tires, and he said, "Go for it." Which one do you think had my best interest at heart? The guy that said, "Go for it," with a grin on his face, a smirk, or the guy that said, "Just don't do it"? So we can take all these lessons and apply them to our everyday lives, and hopefully those of us that are seniors that have experienced a lot of these things and pass on some of these experiences that we've had to youngers and also to each other, really. I mean, we never stop looking, for ways to help each other, but we should always be working on building a relationship with others and to be a friend to everyone, to the young married couple, to the seniors, to the singles, to the young children. The blessings you bring to others will be returned to you by manyfold. Your wisdom may help others to avoid serious mistakes. It may help those that are struggling with life to find balance. Every one of us has a valuable role to play. Find yours. Dedicate your life to serving God. Again, Johnny's picked out a song for us to as an invitation song. I'm not good at giving invitations. I look at in 9/11, talking about bring Christ your broken life. He will restore you, and that's a promise, that He has. And we, no matter what has happened in our life, no longer how long we've been out there without traction in our life, God will forgive us. He will no longer remember those years, but our hope is that as we bring the Word, that there will be success in the Word, and that we, as a congregation, a family here, who I've only seen a few congregations as, I don't want to use the word unique, but as loving and as caring for each other as this congregation is. And I'm so thankful to be part of that. And we're here to to serve. Again, as individuals, we're here to serve each other. We're here to serve the church. We're here to grow the congregation and to spread the gospel throughout. We're a blessed church in that we have a large asset in how we use these talents or these assets. There will come a day that we will be judged for those things. And my prayer is that we look to whatever our talent is, whatever our ability is, and that we use it. Thank you.
Pure in heart, O God, help me to be. May I devote my heart wholly to Thee. Watch thou my wayward feet, guide me with counsel sweet. Pure in heart, help me to be. Pure in heart, O God, help me to be. Teach me to do Thy will most lovingly. Be Thou my friend and guide. Let me with Thee abide. Pure in heart, help me to be. Pure in heart, O God, help me to be. That I Thy holy face one day may see. Keep me from secret sin.